According to the lawsuit, Will Smith and Brian King Joseph first met after Joseph did some studio sessions with several high-profile artists. After those sessions, he was referred to Will as someone that could potentially be used for some recordings.
December 2024 was supposed to mark the beginning of a carefully planned comeback for Will Smith. After years of controversy and silence, he was preparing to return to the stage with a global tour, something big enough to reset his image and remind people who he was before everything went sideways. Part of that vision involved rebuilding his sound, adding new energy, new talent, and a fresh edge. That's when the search began for a violinist, not just any violinist, but an electric one. Someone who could bring intensity, emotion, and something unexpected to the performances. That search led to Brian King Joseph. For Joseph, the call felt unreal. He wasn't just another musician trying to break through, he was already known. A former America's Got Talent finalist who placed third back in 2018.
In November of 2024, Joseph meets Will in person and shows him what he can do on the violin. From there, Will agrees to let him play at an upcoming show he has in San Diego. On the San Diego show, which was in December of 2024,
he had spent years building a reputation as a boundary-pushing violinist who blended classical skill with modern sound. This wasn't a small opportunity. This was the kind of moment artists wait their entire lives for. A chance to step onto a global stage alongside one of the biggest entertainers in the world. According to the lawsuit, Will Smith and Brian King Joseph first crossed paths after Joseph participated in studio sessions with several high-profile artists. Word of his talent traveled fast, and eventually, he was referred directly to Will Smith as someone who could be brought in for recordings and potentially live performances. Joseph's background made the opportunity even more meaningful. He was self-taught from the age of 4, inspired by watching his older sister play violin. By 2012, his talent earned him a presidential scholarship to Berklee College of Music, one of the most respected music schools in the world. But what truly set him apart was how he played. Electric violin, high energy, genre blending, revolutionary enough that fans started calling him the king of violin. His online presence backed that up too, with more than 15 million YouTube views, showcasing performances that felt more like concerts.
And according to the lawsuit, Will then invites Brian King Joseph to be more involved in the performances and tells him that he's a valuable member of the team and offers him more stage time during the shows. And their relationship, according to the lawsuit, grew even closer.
Then recitals. In November 2024, Joseph met Will Smith in person. He performed for him, showed him exactly what he could do, and according to the lawsuit, Smith was impressed enough to invite him to play at an upcoming show in San Diego. That show, scheduled for December 2024, would become Joseph's official introduction into Smith's touring world.
The suit says that the two of them began spending additional time alone, with Will Smith even telling Joseph, quote, "You and I have a special connection that I don't have with anyone else." Okay. And other similar expressions indicating his closeness to Joseph.
The invitation carried real weight. This wasn't a one-off appearance. Smith was gearing up for his Based on a True Story 2025 global tour, supporting his first full-length album in nearly 2 decades. The album was set to drop in March 2025, with the tour launching internationally almost immediately afterward. For Joseph, this wasn't just another gig. This was a career-defining moment. What most people didn't know was that Joseph was carrying a serious medical condition with him the entire time. While studying at Berklee, he had been diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy, a degenerative nerve disease that causes chronic pain, numbness, and loss of sensation in the hands and feet.
And so here's what we know. According to the lawsuit, the violinist Brian King Joseph says last March, while in Las Vegas for a performance, he returned to his hotel room to find random items, including a beer bottle, HIV medication.
For a violinist, especially one whose entire style depended on precision and control, that diagnosis could have ended everything. Instead, Joseph kept performing, turning his condition into a source of strength and inspiration rather than limitation. According to the lawsuit, as rehearsals and performances continued, Will Smith began inviting Joseph to take on a more visible role during shows, more stage time, more involvement. Smith allegedly told him he was a valuable part of the team. The relationship between the two, as described in the filing, became closer, not physically at first, but emotionally and verbally.
A Drawn Heart, signed Stone F.
Now, the lawsuit says the plaintiff feared that an unknown individual would soon return to his room to engage in sexual acts with plaintiff.
The lawsuit claims that Smith began telling Joseph that they shared something special, something unique, that their connection was different from what Smith had with anyone else. Phrases like,
Now, around 11 p.m. on March 20th, 2025, Brian King Joseph says that he goes to the room that he had been assigned and discovered, quote, evidence suggesting that an unknown person had unlawfully entered the room.
"You and I have a special connection that I don't have with anyone else." were allegedly repeated, reinforcing a sense of exclusivity and emotional closeness. Then came March 2025. The first leg of the tour landed in Las Vegas with a show scheduled at the House of Blues on March 20th. The band and crew were booked into a hotel with rooms assigned and managed entirely by Smith's management team.
He says once he reported the incident to Smith's team, he was fired and told he was lying about what happened.
According to Joseph, only management had access to the room assignments. Everything was tightly controlled. That day, something strange happened. Joseph's bag went missing, according to the same bag that contained his hotel room key. He had accidentally left it in a transportation van after rehearsal. Tour management spent hours retrieving it, finally returning it later that night. At the time, it seemed like an inconvenience. In hindsight, Joseph would say the timing felt deliberate. Around 11 p.m., Joseph returned to his hotel room. What he walked into immediately set off alarm bells. Someone had been inside his room.
Well, Miley, Will Smith is being sued by a former violinist in his tour group, accusing the rapper of sexual harassment, wrongful termination, and retaliation.
There was no sign of forced entry, something hotel security would later confirm, but the evidence was undeniable. Wipes left on surfaces, a beer bottle, a red backpack that didn't belong to him, an earring, hospital discharge paperwork with a name he didn't recognize. And then there were the medications. According to the lawsuit, among the items left behind was a bottle of HIV medication with another person's name printed clearly on the label. That alone was disturbing, but what made the situation truly terrifying was the handwritten note.
So the suit says that Brian, who was now concerned for his safety and the safety of his fellow performers and crew, notifies everyone about what happened and requests a room change. He also calls the local non-emergency line and files an incident report with hotel security.
Ryan, I'll be back no later than 5:30, just us. A heart was drawn underneath. The note was signed. At that moment, Joseph says the reality hit him all at once. Someone had been in his room without permission. Someone had planned to return.
So this is all on March 20th, and the lawsuit says the next day, Brian goes back to Los Angeles, and when he tries to show up at a recording for a pre-recorded show, he's told by a member of Will Smith's team that he was too late and that they would just see him in New Mexico for the next leg of the tour.
And the note strongly suggested that whoever entered believed the room was theirs to use for a private sexual encounter. Hotel security confirmed what Joseph feared most. Only Smith's management team had access to his room. No outside guests, no random hotel air. Access was limited. Joseph did everything right. He photographed the scene, contacted the hotel security, reported the incident to Smith's representatives, even called the local non-emergency police line to create a record. According to the lawsuit, he was scared, not hypothetically, but genuinely afraid that someone would return to his room. The legal filing describes his mental state clearly. He feared that an unknown individual would soon return to engage in sexual acts with him. That fear was based on physical evidence and a written note promising a return.
And so the suit says the facts of this case strongly suggest that Will Smith was deliberately grooming and priming Mr. Joseph for further sexual exploitation.
These claims are false, baseless, and reckless, and he will use all legal means necessary to ensure that the truth is brought to light. Joseph claims he was fired after reporting sexual harassment while on that tour and suffered from PTSD and economic loss, though just how much in damages Joseph is seeking is not listed on the claim.
What happened next would define the lawsuit. Instead of investigating, Smith's team allegedly turned on him. Joseph claims that after reporting the incident, he was accused of lying. A member of Smith's team, identified as Tim Miller, confronted him. The message was blunt. Management believed he fabricated the entire story. Shortly after, Joseph was fired from the tour. No protection, no inquiry, no accountability. Even more telling, according to the lawsuit, Smith's team immediately hired another violinist to replace him in the exact same role. Joseph alleges this was textbook retaliation. Report a serious safety concern, get labeled a liar, lose your job. The lawsuit goes further, arguing that the emotional closeness Smith allegedly cultivated, combined with the missing bag and hotel key, the unauthorized room entry, and the items left behind, all point to a deliberate pattern. The language used is strong. The complaint states that the facts strongly suggest Willard Carroll Smith II was deliberately grooming and priming Joseph for further sexual exploitation.
Unfortunately, some things happened, and I can't get into the details of exactly what that was because it's already a legal issue right now. But the reason why I'm speaking out about this, simply for reporting sexual misconduct or safety threats at work, is not okay. And I know that there's a lot of other people out there who have been afraid to speak up.
Intrusion at his Las Vegas hotel room. He came back to his hotel, he says, and found that there was no forced entry, but that someone had entered the room and left a number of items there.
Smith's attorney, Alan B. Grodsky, responded forcefully, denying every allegation. He called the claims false, baseless, and reckless, stating that Smith would use every legal avenue available to bring the truth to light. But for Joseph, the damage had already been done. The lawsuit claims he now suffers from PTSD and severe economic loss. His career momentum stalled overnight. The trauma of that night in Las Vegas, followed by being fired for speaking up, continues to impact his life. Days before filing the lawsuit, Joseph posted a video explaining why he felt compelled to speak out, even while the matter was still under legal review. He said reporting misconduct or safety threats at work should never result in punishment, and that many others stay silent out of fear. The lawsuit names both Will Smith and his company, Treyal Studios Management, as defendants. It seeks compensatory damages, attorney's fees, and a jury trial. The claims include sexual harassment, wrongful termination, and retaliation.
So the defendant, his name is Brian King Joseph. He then reported this to police, the hotel staff, and he also said he reported it to Smith's management team. But he claims that he was then shamed by Will Smith's management team. And he says he was then fired. And then shortly after he was fired, they said they were going in a different direction, but then they ended up hiring another violinist. So he is now suing for, among other things, emotional distress and economic loss.
Joseph claims the next day, so March 21st, he goes back to LA to support the crew and the cast for a pre-recorded show. However, he alleges that Tim Miller, the complaint doesn't really explain who that is.
Allegations that, if proven, could permanently alter the legacy of one of Hollywood's most recognizable figures. And it all started with a violinist answering what seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. Retaliation and intimidation, that's where this story truly shifts. What happened inside that Las Vegas hotel room was disturbing on its own. But according to Brian King Joseph, it was only the beginning. The real damage came after he spoke up. Hotel security arrived first. Joseph walked them through everything in detail. The handwritten note, the medication, the items left behind, the timeline. Security confirmed there had been no forced entry, which immediately ruled out random access or a hotel error. Whoever entered that room had legitimate access. That fact alone narrowed the list of possibilities dramatically. Joseph requested an immediate room change.
Quote, when plaintiff requested for further reasoning, Tim Miller, acting on behalf of defendants, redirected the blame for the termination onto plaintiff, replying, I don't know, you tell me.
And the hotel complied without hesitation. The intrusion was treated seriously by staff exactly as it should have been. Joseph then contacted local authorities. He called the non-emergency police line and filed an official report. Every detail was documented, every statement recorded. From a legal standpoint, this mattered. He was creating a paper trail, the kind that becomes critical that when allegations are later questioned or challenged. Photos were taken, security logs reviewed, reports filed. Nothing was left vague or undocumented. Next, Joseph contacted Will Smith's tour management. He reported everything that had happened, believing this was the step that would lead to protection or at least an internal investigation. He expected concern, he expected urgency. What he received instead would later become central to his lawsuit. Days passed, no response, no follow-up, no questions. Then finally, a representative from tour management reached out, but the conversation was nothing like what Joseph anticipated. According to the complaint, accusations came immediately. He was told that others were saying nothing had happened, that the incident was fabricated, that he had made the entire story up. The person who had reported a serious safety violation.
Was this a way to just, discredit Joseph? Or alternatively, why did he really believe that? Are there those refuting Joseph's narrative? In the complaint, Joseph alleges that he was shocked by this accusation from Miller. Plaintiff further pleads on information and belief that defendant's conduct goes beyond a mere failure to protect an employee's safety or a dispute over a claim. Facts strongly suggest that defendant Willard Carroll Smith II was deliberately grooming and priming Mr. Joseph for further sexual exploitation.
Brian Joseph King made a name for himself when he competed on America's Got Talent and dazzled the audience and judges with his incredible talent, placing as a top 3 finalist in 2018.
Was now being framed as a liar. At no point, according to Joseph, did management ask to see his evidence. No one requested the photos. No one reviewed the police report. No one contacted hotel security. Instead, he was allegedly asked a question that stunned him. Why did you lie? Why did you make this up? The implication was clear. The decision had already been made before the conversation even started. Joseph tried to explain again. He reminded them of the documentation, the security confirmation, the police report. None of it mattered. The complaint alleges that management showed no concern for his safety or mental well-being. The response was disbelief. followed by blame. Then came the termination. According to the lawsuit, Joseph was told the tour was going in a different direction as corporate language, vague phrasing, the kind of explanation companies often use when they want to avoid stating the real reason. He was fired shortly after reporting the incident. That explanation unraveled almost immediately.
He says after he made allegations of sexual harassment to Will Smith's management team, he was fired.
Getting fired or getting blamed or shamed or threatened or anything like that simply for reporting sexual misconduct or safety threats at work.
Well, they're adamantly denying all of these claims. Smith's attorney has released a statement. We can read it here. It says, Mr. Joseph's allegations concerning my client are false, baseless, and reckless.
So he didn't really get into who he was talking about or the legal claims before the filing was made public. Okay, before I get into the legal claims, if this did happen to him, and he can prove it. And remember, when talking about a civil case, it's not a criminal case. The burden of proof is much lower at trial.
Within days, another violinist was hired to fill the exact same role on the same tour. Same responsibilities, same position, just a different person. To Joseph, this wasn't coincidence, it was confirmation. The lawsuit quotes an exchange with Tim Miller, acting on behalf of Smith's team, where Joseph asked for further explanation. The response he allegedly received was chilling. I don't know, you tell me. According to the complaint, the blame for the termination was being redirected entirely onto Joseph himself. That's where the word grooming enters the legal argument. In legal terms, grooming isn't casual. It implies a calculated pattern, not a single incident. The lawsuit argues that Smith's earlier comments about their special connection, the increased private interactions, and the alleged hotel intrusion all point towards something far more deliberate. What Joseph initially perceived as mentorship or professional encouragement is now framed as a method of establishing trust and emotional closeness. The complaint states that, on information and belief, the defendant's conduct went beyond a failure to protect an employee. It alleges that the facts strongly suggest Willard Carroll Smith II was deliberately grooming and priming Joseph for further sexual exploitation. The consequences for Joseph didn't end with losing his job. According to the filing, he suffered severe emotional distress following the incident and his termination. Medical professionals later diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder. The psychological impact was significant enough to require ongoing mental health treatment. His sense of safety was shattered. His trust in the industry collapsed. Then came the financial damage. Joseph lost his position on a high-profile global tour that would have provided long-term income and major career visibility. Opportunities that were once within reach suddenly disappeared. Industry relationships cooled. Word spread that he had been terminated under controversial circumstances. His reputation took hits that he's still trying to recover from. This is someone who had already built a name for himself. Brian King Joseph became widely known after placing third on America's Got Talent in 2018, captivating audiences and judges with his talent. According to the lawsuit, everything he had worked for stalled almost overnight. Joseph is now seeking damages to be determined by a jury. His claims include wrongful termination, retaliation for reporting sexual harassment, emotional distress, and intimidation. He argues that being fired, blamed, and shamed simply for reporting misconduct is not only unethical, but illegal. Will Smith's attorney, Alan B. Grodsky, has responded unequivocally. He described the allegations as false, baseless, and reckless. He stated that Smith's legal team would use every available legal avenue to address the claims and bring the truth to light. As of now, Smith himself has not made a public statement. His attorney's response remains the only official comment. The lawsuit now moves forward into a legal system that will ultimately decide which version of events holds up under scrutiny. For Joseph, the fight continues. He has already lost his job, his income, and according to his filing, his sense of security. Now he's asking a jury to recognize a core principle of employment law. Reporting sexual misconduct should never result in retaliation. California law is particularly clear on this point. The state's Fair Employment and Housing Act explicitly prohibits retaliation against employees who report harassment or safety concerns. The timing matters. An incident is reported. Days later, the employee is fired. A replacement is hired almost immediately. That sequence forms the backbone of retaliation claims. Smith's legal team will need to prove that Joseph's termination was based on legitimate business reasons completely unrelated to his report. The challenge is obvious. The role still existed. The tour continued. Only the person was removed. The case raises difficult questions. Is this an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern? Is there enough evidence to support claims of grooming and exploitation, or does the truth lie somewhere that hasn't fully surfaced yet? Those answers now rest with the court. The burden of proof in cases like this doesn't stay fixed. It shifts step by step, and understanding how that happens is key to understanding why this lawsuit matters as much as it does. At the start, the responsibility sits squarely on Brian King Joseph. He has to establish what's known legally as a prima facie case. That means proving 3 core elements. First, that he engaged in protected activity. Second, that he suffered an adverse employment action. And third, that there is a causal connection between the two. Protected activity is a crucial phrase here. It doesn't mean proving a crime occurred. It means showing that Joseph reasonably believed he was reporting conduct that violated the law, or at the very least posed a serious safety concern. Reporting a suspected sexual harassment incident, an unlawful intrusion, or a workplace safety violation qualifies. According to the complaint, Joseph did exactly that. He reported what he believed to be a serious and threatening incident to hotel security, to police, and to Will Smith's management team. The second element, adverse employment action, is far more straightforward. Joseph was terminated. Losing your job is one of the clearest examples of an adverse action under employment law. The third element, causation, is where timing becomes everything. Joseph reports the incident. Days later, he's fired. Shortly after, another violinist is hired to fill the exact same role. That sequence alone is often enough to raise serious red flags in retaliation cases. If Joseph successfully establishes those 3 points, the burden then shifts to Will Smith and the defendants. At that stage, Smith's legal team must provide legitimate, non-retaliatory reasons for Joseph's termination, not vague explanations, not general statements about direction. They must articulate a lawful business reason that explains why Joseph was fired that has nothing to do with his report. Then the burden shifts again. Once Smith's team presents its reasons, Joseph gets a final opportunity. He can attempt to prove that those reasons are pretextual. In other words, that they're not the real reasons at all, but cover stories designed to mask retaliation. This is where internal emails, text messages, timelines, witness testimony, and management decisions become critical. Courts don't just look at what employers say, they look at whether the explanation actually makes sense when compared to what happened. This lawsuit lands at a moment when the entertainment industry is already under renewed scrutiny for how it handles allegations of misconduct. The Me Too movement permanently altered expectations around accountability, especially in power imbalanced industries like music and film. Reporting misconduct is no longer supposed to be career ending. At least that's the theory. In practice, retaliation claims continue to be some of the most common and hardest fought cases in employment law. Joseph's complaint doesn't stop at sexual harassment. It also includes a separate retaliation claim under California's labor code. While similar in spirit, this claim has a slightly different legal foundation. The argument here is that it is illegal for an employer to retaliate against an employee for disclosing information that the employee reasonably believes violates state or federal law. Again, the focus is not on proving guilt at this stage, but on whether the employee acted in good faith. With the complaint now filed, the case moves into the long grinding machinery of the court system. Discovery, depositions, motions, requests for documents, subpoenas. Both sides will be compelled to turn over evidence. Witnesses will be questioned under oath. Internal communications may be scrutinized line by line. This process can take years, not months. But one thing happens immediately: the allegations become part of the public record. No matter how the case ultimately resolves, it can't be quietly erased. And this lawsuit didn't land in isolation. It dropped into a timeline already thick with legal smoke surrounding the Smith family. On January 1st, 2026, just one day after Joseph's sexual harassment lawsuit became public, Will Smith's attorney, Alan B. Grodsky, issued a forceful response. He didn't hedge, he didn't soften the language. The allegations, he said, were false, baseless, and reckless, categorically denied. The statement promised that every legal means available would be used to bring the truth to light. The response was immediate and absolute, but this wasn't Will Smith's first legal crisis in recent months. In December 2025, a completely separate lawsuit surfaced, this one targeting Jada Pinkett Smith. Bilal Salam filed a $3 million complaint alleging threats, intimidation, and emotional distress. The allegations trace back to September 25, 2021, during Will Smith's birthday celebration at the Regency Calabasas Commons. According to Salam's complaint, Jada confronted him in the hotel lobby. She wasn't alone. 7 members of her entourage allegedly surrounded him. The lawsuit claims Jada told Salam that if he continued discussing her personal business, he would either end up missing or catch a bullet. She allegedly demanded he sign a non-disclosure agreement. When he refused, an associate allegedly followed him to his car, continuing the threats the entire way. This wasn't a distant acquaintance. This was Bilal Salam, a man Will Smith once described as his best friend of 40 years, a man featured prominently in Will's memoir, complete with photographs and personal stories, someone deeply embedded in the Smith family's inner circle. Fast forward 6 months, March 2022, the Oscars, the slap heard around the world. Hollywood's reaction fractured public opinion instantly, but according to Salam, something else happened behind the scenes. He claims he received a call asking him to help with crisis management. According to his lawsuit, he refused. He did not want to participate in what he described as a deceptive public relations campaign designed to control the narrative. That refusal, Salam alleges, triggered retaliation, threats, pressure, media manipulation, and when he began working on a memoir detailing his experiences with the Smith family, the situation escalated even further. Then came 2023. Salam appeared on Tasha K's platform and made explosive allegations involving Will Smith and actor Dwayne Martin. The claims went viral almost instantly. Jada responded publicly, calling the allegations ridiculous and nonsense. She suggested Salam was attempting a shakedown for money. She told TMZ they would be suing, but no lawsuit ever followed. According to Salam's complaint, that public threat was itself made with malicious intent, designed to damage his credibility and reputation in the court of public opinion without ever stepping into an actual courtroom. Now look at the timeline. December 1st, 2025, Salam sues Jada Pinkett Smith for alleged death threats. December 30th, 2025, Brian King Joseph sues Will Smith for sexual harassment and retaliation less than 30 days apart, both during the holiday season, both from former insiders, both alleging retaliation after refusing to stay silent. At this stage, patterns start to matter. Both lawsuits involve claims of threats. Both involve alleged career destruction. Both come from people who once worked closely with the Smith family. Salam's complaint lays out claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress, financial devastation, physical health decline, and the collapse of his personal and professional life. He's seeking $3 million in damages. The Smith family's legal strategy has been consistent so far. Flat denials, strong language, public dismissal of allegations, threats of legal action, but history shows a gap between public statements and follow-through. The lawsuit Jada promised after the Dwayne Martin allegations never materialized. Meanwhile, Will Smith's own career arc has been volatile. The Oscar slap resulted in a 10-year ban from Academy events. He resigned from the Academy, issued public apologies. His image as America's nice guy took a severe hit. Then came the comeback attempt. In March 2025, he released Based on a True Story, his first album in 2 decades. A global tour followed. Cities sold out. Critics talked about redemption. Then, according to the lawsuit, the Vegas incident happened. Now everything hangs in the balance. The sexual harassment lawsuit overshadows the comeback narrative entirely. The irony is impossible to miss. A memoir celebrating loyalty and lifelong friendship now exists alongside lawsuits from former friends alleging threats and retaliation. And this is only the beginning. Once these cases move past the initial filings, everything changes. The courtroom stops being about headlines and starts becoming about evidence. Discovery is the phase where reputations are no longer protected by press statements or carefully worded denials. It's the phase where facts are forced into the open, whether anyone wants them there or not. And for Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, discovery represents the most dangerous part of this entire saga. If Brian King Joseph's lawsuit proceeds into full discovery, the scope of what could be uncovered is enormous. This isn't just about one night in Las Vegas or one termination decision. Discovery would open the door to internal tour management communications, hotel security footage, access logs, emails between Smith's management and hotel staff, and text messages exchanged in the hours and days following Joseph's report. Every decision made after that report becomes relevant. Who discussed it, how it was framed, whether anyone questioned Joseph's credibility before or after speaking to him, whether legal counsel was consulted before the termination, all of it matters. Corporate liability also looms large. Joseph didn't just sue Will Smith personally. He named Trey Ball Studios management incorporated the entity responsible for managing the tour operations. That's a critical move. Corporations don't enjoy the same emotional defenses individuals do. They are judged on process, policy, and paper trails. If discovery reveals a failure to investigate, a rush to terminate, or communication suggesting the complaint was viewed as a liability rather than a safety issue, the case strengthens significantly. And then there's the question of hotel access. Hotel security reportedly confirmed there was no forced entry into Joseph's room. That fact alone narrows the list of possible explanations dramatically. Key cards don't clone themselves. Access logs exist. If discovery reaches that data, it could answer one of the most unsettling questions in the case. Who had the ability to enter that room without Joseph's knowledge? The same dynamic applies to Bilal Salam's lawsuit. Discovery there would expose communications surrounding alleged NDA demands, internal conversations after the Oscar slap, and any coordination between public relations teams and legal counsel. Salam's claim that he was pressured into silence after refusing to assist with crisis management is not just an emotional allegation, it's a legally actionable one. If supported by documentation or witness testimony, what makes these cases especially volatile is that they don't exist in isolation. Courts don't technically try cases together unless consolidated, but public perception does. 2 lawsuits within 30 days, 2 former insiders, 2 claims of retaliation and intimidation, 2 defendants from the same family. Even if each case is evaluated independently, the narrative they create together is powerful. Patterns matter. In employment law and civil litigation, patterns often carry more weight than isolated incidents. 1 allegation can be dismissed as a misunderstanding. 2 can be coincidence, but when multiple people across different years describe similar dynamics of pressure, threats, and professional fallout after speaking up, it becomes much harder to explain away. The timing also matters. Will Smith's attempted redemption arc was still fragile. The Oscar slap permanently altered how the public sees him. The 10-year Academy ban wasn't symbolic. It was reputational damage that no apology tour could fully erase. His comeback album and tour were supposed to reframe the narrative, control the story, reintroduce him as reflective, accountable, changed. Joseph's lawsuit disrupts that entirely. Sexual harassment and retaliation allegations don't sit quietly next to redemption narratives, they overpower them, especially in a post-Me Too era where public tolerance for power-based misconduct has collapsed. Even the perception of retaliation against someone who reported a safety concern is enough to stall careers, end endorsement deals, and freeze projects indefinitely. Financially, Will Smith can withstand this. His net worth is estimated around $350 million. He can afford elite legal teams, he can absorb settlements if necessary. But reputation doesn't operate on a balance sheet. Reputation determines who returns calls, who greenlights projects, and who distances themselves quietly without explanation. Hollywood is already cautious. Studios don't like uncertainty. Investors don't like controversy. Streaming platforms don't like becoming collateral damage in lawsuits. And these allegations, whether proven or not, inject risk into anything attached to the Smith brand. The same applies to Jada Pinkett Smith. Salam's lawsuit alleges threats severe enough to cause lasting emotional distress and reputational harm. If discovery supports even part of his claims, the fallout won't be limited to courtrooms. It will reshape how past interviews, public statements, and narratives are reinterpreted. Silence, in retrospect, can become suspicious. Aggressive denials can become strategic rather than truthful. Another factor complicating everything is the role of NDAs. Both lawsuits reference alleged efforts to silence through non-disclosure agreements. NDAs have long been used in entertainment, but courts have grown increasingly skeptical of NDAs used to suppress reports of misconduct or threats. If evidence shows NDAs were demanded under coercive circumstances, that alone can trigger additional legal exposure. And then there's the court of public opinion, which moves faster than any judge. Social media doesn't wait for verdicts. Once discovery leaks, and it almost always does in high-profile cases, narratives form instantly. Screenshots circulate, clips resurface, old interviews get re-examined. Statements that once seemed benign take on darker interpretations. This is where the Smiths face their greatest vulnerability. They've built their careers on likability, relatability, and perceived authenticity. Will Smith wasn't just an actor, he was a brand. The Fresh Prince, the safe choice, the guy audiences trusted. That image survived box office failures. It survived shifting industry tastes. It barely survived the Oscars slap. These lawsuits threaten something deeper: trust. If juries ultimately side with Joseph or Salam, the legal consequences could be severe. Multi-million-dollar damages are not unusual in retaliation and emotional distress cases. But even if settlements occur quietly, the damage is already embedded in the public record. Complaints don't disappear. Allegations don't vanish, the internet doesn't forget, and discovery hasn't even begun yet. Security footage, text messages, emails, tour schedules, management notes, all of it sits somewhere waiting to be requested, waiting to be examined, waiting to either confirm or collapse the accusations. What's certain is that the Smith family is no longer dealing with isolated controversies. They're navigating parallel legal battles that echo each other in disturbing ways. Former insiders, claims of retaliation, allegations of threats, career destruction following refusal to stay silent. Whether these allegations are ultimately proven or disproven will be decided in court, but the patterns are already influencing perception. And in today's entertainment industry, perception often moves faster and hits harder than verdicts. The legal process will take months, possibly years. Depositions will be taken, motions will be argued, settlements may be discussed behind closed doors, but one thing cannot be undone. The narrative has shifted. The redemption arc is no longer in control of the Smiths. It's now in the hands of plaintiffs, judges, juries, and evidence, and that changes everything. Now I want to hear from you. After seeing how these lawsuits intersect, the timelines, the patterns, and the stakes involved, do you think this is a coincidence of bad timing, or does it point to something deeper inside the Smiths' inner circle? Do you believe discovery will clear their names or expose things they never expected to come out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want updates as these cases move forward and discovery begins to unfold, make sure you're subscribed and locked in, because once the evidence starts surfacing, there's no going back.